Hey everyone, welcome to our Beyond the Pulpit podcast. We are so excited to be able to have conversations about those things you wouldn't talk about on a Sunday morning, whether it's because, you don't have enough time or, hey, it's a little controversial, it's a little uncomfortable. Well, welcome back to Beyond the Pulpit. We are so excited to have our friend Pastor Wayne Francis from The Life Church.
Well.
Different church in Westchester, New York area. And so we're going to talk all about friendships today.
Yeah.
From what I hear, you are passionate about friendships. And one of the things first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
For everybody who's watching and listening, we just had the Whole Man Men's Conference at Steel Stacks. Yep, it's all over your head. It's your hat. It's on my jacket. And it was an incredible day. Hundreds of men just leaning in. So it was really, really good. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity to talk.
Yep.
But before I ask you about your story and all those kind of things, one of the things that I've learned over the last couple years, and those that attend Life Church know that we've been through this transition process now. My wife and I are the lead pastors. But one of the prayers that we had about 4 or 5 years ago was my wife and I were praying for mentors. Mm-hmm. We said, God, as we transition in, we need mentors. And God did that like crazy. And then about 2 years ago, we started praying for friends. Because one of the things that we realized was we had friends, but we didn't have friends that completely understood or could relate to the world we're living in. And so that's been our prayer. And little by little, we've been able to develop these friends. And one of the things I had to learn was, because I'm an introvert.
Okay.
And my wife's not. But because I'm an introvert, I literally could go on vacation by myself for a week and be totally okay. I wouldn't even it wouldn't matter. My wife couldn't do it. Right? So I had to teach myself, or I've been teaching myself, the importance of friendships. Of not being isolated. And one of the things that, I share often, it's part of my story, is my own personal battle with depression and anxiety. And so isolation, of course,
breeds depression and anxiety.
Correct. And so when we knew you were coming and we started talking about being able to have the opportunity to talk on the podcast, I asked you on the phone a couple weeks ago, what is something you're passionate about? And you said that you're passionate about friendships.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to talk to you about friendships. But before we do that, why don't you tell the listeners, the people watching, a little bit about yourself and your story and your church, and then we'll dig into friendships.
Yeah, what's up? My name is Wayne Francis again. I hail from the Bronx, really. I'm a Bronx native, but I live in Westchester. I got bougie, moved to the suburbs. Born and raised in New York City. Been married, about to be married for 25 years.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you.
You were only a kid when you got married.
I know, I'm just it's crazy. But my wife's name is Classy. That's not her real name, but ever since I started dating her, I started calling her Classy. Her real name is Claudine, but nobody calls her Claudine. I only call her Claudine when I'm upset. So we have 2 daughters, one that's 21 and one that is about to turn 19. We started a church 15 years ago called Authentic Church. And about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, we merged our church with The Life Church. I'm just messing
Different
with you.
than our church,
Our
Life Church.
Our Life Church. Pastors John and Leslie Siebling, church that they founded in Memphis, Tennessee. We became the first national location, and my wife and I are the lead pastors of that. Having a lot of fun. Opened a building a year and a half ago, and we are just doing our thing, baby.
And you were telling me that you've had 118% increase.
Yeah, but 120 sounds better for the podcast.
All right, 120% increase in attendance since opening up the building, and God's doing some incredible things there. Hey, tell me a little bit, unrelated to the podcast and friendship, but now I'm just curious. Tell me a little bit about what you did before planting Authentic Church.
Yeah, I was a dean of students for a Bible college for a little bit. And then I became the director of marketing and promotion for a nonprofit organization, which was a denomination of sorts. And did a lot of work in creating assets that were visual or tactile to promote the different ministries. And so it was really creative and hosted conferences in arenas.
That's really cool.
Created videos and made music and really it was the philanthropic arm of the organization. So we raised a lot of money, but
That's really
I did
cool.
the creativity stuff for it.
I was curious about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I couldn't remember how long the church Authentic was before you merged with the Life Church.
Yeah.
But anyway, so thanks for sharing all that. Super excited that you're on the podcast. Tell me a little bit about why you have such a passion for friendships.
For two reasons, I guess. One of the reasons is I don't believe that you can experience the best of God without experiencing it with other people. That God has created everything in life on a 90-degree angle, that we relate to him, but we learn how to relate to him better with the people that we're connected to. And then basically, I just kind of always have felt like I have such a huge heart for people, and the only way to do life with people in the best way is friendship with no strings attached. So I like to tell people Jesus had an elevated theology of friendship. And so one of the most important things to me, I call our church a friendship factory, which is so cool because this is like this factory.
Oh yeah, right behind us, the steel stacks.
Yeah. And I like to think of our church as a friendship factory. Yeah.
That's really good. A friendship factory. It's interesting though, because you pastor in a large church, and a lot of times, a lot of the feedback that larger churches will get is that it just is transactional. It's not about relationship. It's not about friendship. So I love how that's what you call your church, is a friendship factory.
Yep.
So what would you say for you, was there a change when you were growing up? What was was there a friendship that really impacted you, that caused you to have this passion for friendships? Because guys don't tend to really dig into friendships.
True.
Right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's matured for me over the years, of course, but I had 4 sisters. The sister that was the closest to me in age was 10 years older than me. So I kind of grew up like an only child. And so I think that gave me a higher appetite to connect with other men and to have friends. And I had some very diverse friendships, to be quite honest with you. When I was little, growing up in the Bronx, it was like a melting pot of races. So, you had an Asian friend, and then there was the Puerto Rican that lived across the street, and then there was white kids. And it was just like, I felt like I was learning so many things by having friends when I was young. And because I felt very lonely as a child, I probably was way too over-dependent on friendships early and had to learn how to break codependency over a time. But I've just always been interested in making friends and not meeting strangers. I never meet strangers.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said that you were lonely growing up as a child, because our interactions, you're just a super social, super friendly guy, and buzzing around, and I've seen you at conferences just buzzing around, connect. Everybody knows you, everybody hugs you, you're like everybody's best friend, and so it's interesting how our childhood, or what we may have experienced, so much forms who we are as adults. 100%. Right? And for me, as someone who is an introvert, someone who can have the tendency of isolating, it's almost sometimes can feel foreign to me to do that, right? I'm not the guy that can get into a room. If I go into a room of crowded people, I'll find the closest corner to stand in, and I'll be totally okay with it.
Wow.
Right? And then there's others, probably yourself and my wife, they'll go in the room and they'll work the room. They'll connect with people.
I'll be drawn to people like you, though, in a room.
Interesting.
I'm drawn to large personalities, but I'm more drawn to the person that's trying not to be large.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that. Why do you think that?
Because those are the people that are having the internal tennis match on why am I here? And it could be in 2 ways. It could be like, why am I here? I don't belong here, imposter type of thing. Or it's like, I really want to be here, but is anybody going to see me and know me? I don't have enough this, or I don't have enough that. And they're the most intriguing people, because then when you start asking questions and you start opening them up, they're more fascinating than the person that feels very comfortable in the room.
I love that, because one of the things that I've really appreciated about those that have impacted my life over the years are those that were willing to have that conversation with me, right? And as pastors, people who communicate for a living, a lot of times they don't understand that that's how, like for me, that's my personality. But I know that as I've processed through my family of origin stuff, I've counseling, all these kind of things, is a lot of the reason why I'll do those kind of things is not because I don't want friends or that I'm closed off. It's because of the insecurities or the brokenness or those kind of things that that have impacted me that I feel insecure. Absolutely. In those moments. Can I relate to this person? Can I relate to who's in this room, right? You know, all those kind of things. So I really appreciated what you said. It's interesting to me because we just had a men's conference. Yes. Right? And
great men's conference, by the way.
Thank you.
Especially for your inaugural debut. It was great. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. You know, one of the things that a lot of men will say is, you know, I don't need other men. Yeah. I don't need other people, right? I don't need someone. And one of the things that we know is that we know it, but it's hard for, like I just told a little bit about myself, it's hard to actually execute it, is that it's really hard to grow spiritually. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if you said that when we hit film or you were saying it before. You were saying how important it is for your spiritual growth to grow in God through friendship. And I'd like us to unpack that a little bit. For those that are listening or watching, like, hey, I'm good with God. I read my Bible. I show up to church. I sit in the back row. But I don't need a small group. I don't need a friend. I don't need any of that. I'm growing in God. I'm good. God and I are, you know, compadres. We're buddies. Like, why are you telling me, Pastor Wayne, that I need friends to grow more spiritually? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let's take one component of it. According to scripture from Brother James, you can't even find healing without another person. Now, you can confess your sin to God, but you have to confess your fault to somebody else for your healing. So baked into your discipleship is literally having to be in context with another person moving in the same spiritual trajectory. So there's no way that you can, I mean, look at Jesus. Jesus's life was surrounded by people that he had friendships with. So what makes us think that we can be absent of it? All throughout the Old Testament to the New Testament is this real strong chord of friendship, theology. Jesus says things like, hey, I don't call you servants anymore. Like, hey, I call you friends. That's a big deal. Yeah. And I think we've underplayed. It's actually very worldly to say I don't need friends, right? Like this kind of isolation ethos, right? Frank Sinatra, I did it my way. I'm by myself. It doesn't resonate with the gospel. Paul is spending more time in the New Testament greeting people that he's doing life with than a lot of the subject matters that he's dealing with. And what's so cool is that he has a healthy way of even dealing with the loss of friendships, right? Like Demas forsook me. He loved this world, right? Like there's that trauma of dealing with friendships at work. Hey, Greek Chloe and everybody in there. But then there's like, oh man, Alex the coppersmith did me much harm. You know, there's all of that stuff. And I think some people just avoid friendships because it could be traumatic.
Yeah. You know, as you were talking, all of what you said is so good and so relevant. Is there are some that would say, right, so I just described, as I was leading to that question, I was describing those that say, I don't need friends. Yeah. Right? But then as you were talking, I was processing through how many people say they have friends, but do they really have friends? And so I'm kind of big, my brain thinks in systems and strategy. So for me, it would be helpful as I'm doing some sort of self-reflection. Yeah. What is a good inventory? What's a good process that someone could take to go, wait, okay, so I need friends in order to grow spiritually. It's biblical. Right. Right? God says to Adam, excuse me, right from the beginning, I don't want, it's not good for you to be alone. Yeah. I need you to have a partner. Yep. I need you to be with somebody. I need you to do life with somebody, right? What is a good inventory? What is a good way to go, do I have the right friends around me? And if I don't, what do I do about that? Yeah.
I have a rubric that I use that
it's rubric. I love that word.
It's like it's imagery. It's not perfectly banged out yet, but here's how I look at it. And this is how you can figure out the types of friendships that you have and what you want. I think everybody has sunbathers in their lives. Sunbathers are surface friends. Everybody's on the beach. You can enjoy it. You know, you're enjoying the sun. It's great. You can have conversation, but it's all surface. And you collect those friends. What you have to do is you have to move from sunbathers to snorkelers. Snorkelers are people that, you know, you could get underneath, but you're not going to get too deep, you know, but they can get into conversation. You're going to hang out a little bit more. And
kind of floating on top.
100%. And less people snorkel, right? the next level of friendship that you can look at in your life is like, do I have some people that not only are sunbathers, but they could snorkel? The next is scuba diving, right? These are people that have apparatus to go a little bit deeper. And they have to know how to swim with you. And if they move too quickly out of your life, they'll get the bends, right? Like it'll affect them too.
Yeah.
But the highest level of friendship, actually, which is so funny, is submarine friends, people that you go deep with. And there's less of that. And those people are fewer in number, and they get into the dark places. And most of us, we just don't know how to categorize our friends the right way. And most of us have sunbathers. All of our relationships are surface, and it's okay. We can all just hang out and it's fun, but it doesn't go. You have to make your friendships go from sunbathing to submarine level.
That's really good. And so for those men who may be listening who are married,
yes,
what would you say if they would respond and go, those submarine friends or friend is my spouse?
Okay.
And what do you think? Is that good? Is that not good? Is that, I'd love to hear that, because to be honest, my best friend is my wife.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But I've noticed as I've gotten older, not that she's not enough, don't misunderstand me, is I'm not sure my wife being the only one I go deep with is completely effective in my spiritual and emotional health as a man. Did that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. And so I actually bristle when people tell me that their spouse is their best friend. I always go, oh, okay.
You tense up a little bit.
Yeah, because I think it could be true on an ideological sense, but as a pragmatist, I don't think it's actually healthy. Yeah. Because especially for men, because you could place a burden on your wife that she's not designed to actually serve you.
That's so good.
Also, you know, when a woman says, my husband's my best friend, well, that's also odd too, because there's a certain side of femininity that is mysterious and needs to be nurtured by another woman in a safe context. And so Chris Bruno, in his amazing book, Sage, unpacks this in a big way too, about this idea of just kind of like, it actually sometimes is unhealthy in a marriage because it builds an unhealthy codependency. So my wife's my best friend and I put burdens on her and vice versa. I don't think it's the best thing. And I don't think that means that a male should go and seek a female to another female. We know how disastrous that could be. But I think that you need men that are running mates that will hold you to high levels of accountability, that your wife is a partner in trusting you with. So in other words, I don't want to have a male friend that now becomes the person that I default my everything to in place of my wife. I want a male friend that my wife endorses as a person that is helping to complete my discipleship process and vice versa.
Yeah, so a friend that would complement.
Yes.
Right? Complement the exchange of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that your spouse can trust.
100%.
That they're going to encourage you to be strong in your marriage, encourage you to make right decisions, so forth and so on, versus having this isolation. I think that's another thing that we've noticed a lot as you pastor people, as you shepherd people, is there are those that have tons of friends. Yeah. But it's this one world and then this other world.
Siloed.
Right? And so tell us a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you help people navigate that? Guys or girls.
I think what's so cool about what you're saying, you mentioned a key thing as we get older, as we mature and everything like that. Because I do think that the way we have friendships in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s is very different. But the best way to have friendship is to have your life integrated. So for me, I have a lot of unchurched friends that are not Christians, that I'm extremely close with. Our lives are integrated. They're just integrated in different ways. And I think one thing that we all have to do is to make sure that our interests stay connected to our intentionality. When you lose intentionality around your interests, you're going to lose integration. That's a lot of eyes. I'm a preacher. And so I think in alliteration, right? So I really feel like for us to really flourish in friendships, the piece of intentional coupling of our interests allows us to develop friendships over time that are integrated. I can't I can't just have church friends, work friends, this kind of friends. No, I have friends, and even if they don't share the same faith with me, they have to intersect with other parts of my life for it to make sense. Otherwise, what you start doing is you become a different person in all the contexts that you
That's really good.
you frequent. So when I'm with my unchurched friends, there's a little bit of a different vibe. And then when I'm with my church friends, no, when I'm with everybody, it's the same Wayne. I'm turning up the same way because it's integrated.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said all that, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, how does your faith influence the way you approach and maintain friendships? And so it is interesting. So I want to unpack that a little bit, because for some of those folks that are listening and watching, they could be going, okay, so it's good for me to have non-church, non-Christian friends. True. And I think we can all agree to that. Mm-hmm. But there's times where that can be complicated in your faith, in your faith journey, right? So how does someone navigate that, right? Yeah. We say this often in the churchy world, like Jesus was a friend to sinners, right? Yeah. He hung out with the sinners. Mm-hmm. But it can be challenging. Yeah. See, a few months ago, I sat down with a young person. He was, I think he's 20 years old, and one of his best friends, who lives up in Boston, he was struggling with, because his best friend didn't understand his faith journey. Yeah. And so he was like, what do I do? What do I do, Pastor? Do I cut off this friendship? But we have he's been my friend since I was 5 years old. I don't remember the details. Yeah. What do I do in this? And so how would you respond to that young man if you were across from him having coffee?
I would say there's this statement that an author named Michelle Ventor says. She says, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and when you know which one, you'll know exactly what to do. So I think the bigger question is, there might be a natural shift to the friendship that you don't want to resist, because if your interests are changing and there's not this kind of parallel movement, you need to ask yourself questions about that. But ultimately, when you're having a relationship with a person, let's say that's unchurched or not a Christian, I think the biggest thing to do is, like, there's this guy named Dr. Philip Brand who was very influential in helping to cure leprosy in the 20th and 21st century. And since he worked with lepers all the time, every night he would immerse his hands and his feet into really hot water to figure out, because leprosy, one of the things that kills your nerve endings, so you get numb. And I think what you need to do is get some people that you could keep immersing yourself into to find out if you're getting numb in particular areas, if you're getting affected by something that you can't see. And that's why you stay involved in a local church, you stay involved in a small group that's predominantly comprised of Christians, and you immerse yourself in something hot to let you know if you're getting numb. If you're getting numb, you need to get healed.
That's really good. And so let's backtrack for just a minute, because it all goes together. Let's go a little back. You talked about the rubric. You talked about the different levels of
someday
friendship.
There's a submarine.
Yep. And so if which you said majority of the friendships are these snorkeling friendships. And as you were describing that, I'm going, yep, I get that. Yep. And then at the same time, I'm going, hey, I'm doing pretty good, because I could see the names, hear the names in my head of those different levels of relationship in my life. But let's just say when you do that inventory, that friendship inventory, you're like, hey, 100% of my friends are on the surface. Yeah. They're these, snorkeling friends. Yeah. What advice, what coaching, what would you say to them to deepen those friendships? Are those the friendships they should be deepening, or should they be looking outside on the shore? Well, you talked about the sunbathers too, but maybe it's the sunbathers I'm talking about. But either way, if you've noticed that your friendships are surfacey, what do you do?
Well, if you're doing that audit, you need to ask yourself what type of friend you are to other people, because you may just be attracting exactly what you export.
That's really good.
And so maybe
you're dropping gold, buddy. You're dropping gold.
Thank you. You're kind. And maybe the reason why that's the case is because you're exporting a type of friendship that won't go any deeper, because ultimately, the more transparent we get, the more authentic we get, the more nude emotionally that we get, is the more the relationships change, and it'll start to siphon away the people that don't want to go to that level. It just automatically people start dipping. Yeah,
Yeah. So one of the things that we were teaching our kids, specifically our oldest daughter, who will be 16 next month.
Shout out to all the teenagers.
I know, right? That's a hard season. But one of the things that she'll say, she'll struggle with is she'll go, I don't understand why certain people don't like me, or, all those emotions that happen. And we'll say to her, but how do you approach those relationships? When you walk in the room, are you smiling or you look like a bulldog?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do you have this, we call it the Schwartz scowl, where, your eyebrows are down. And so people aren't going to want to talk to you. They're not going to want to communicate with, and I'm talking from experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, it seems weird, but I had to teach myself as a pastor, as I developed in ministry. I've been in and around this ministry stuff for over 20 years. Like, I had to teach myself to smile.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes in the beginning, it felt really weird.
Like,
it was like, it's super awkward. But because then that smile would cause that other person, for our hope is for their walls to kind of go down.
Yes.
Right. And so I really appreciated what you said, which is what vibes are you giving out?
Yeah.
And I think the way you can figure out those vibes is either by really reflecting on the feedback that people are giving you, or ask people for feedback.
True.
What vibes am I giving? And we gave that advice to our daughter. Like, ask your friends.
Yeah.
Like, what do you look like when you walk into the classroom?
100%.
A lot of times we say this. It's actually a funny story. The one day we were getting ready for church, and we have a Bernedoodle. His name is Rocco. Okay. And he's very affectionate, and he likes to be near us. And she's so frustrated, my daughter, and she's saying to me, tell Rocco to stop staring at me. Oh. Tell Rocco to stop. Why does he keep staring at me?
Yeah.
I finally looked at her. I said, he keeps staring at you because you're staring at him. Right? If you stop staring at him, he'll stop staring at you.
Yeah.
In other words, what is the vibe you're letting out?
So good, man.
And I think that's really important. So if you walk in the room cranky,
you're gonna get some cranky people attracted to you.
Correct. But if you're all weird, if you walk in the room weird, you're gonna get some weird people. Either you're not gonna get anybody that's gonna want to come near you, or you're gonna get some weird people that are gonna be want to come near you. And so I really appreciate that. Hey, what vibes are you giving out? Any more on that, on how to deepen those relationships? Yeah,
I think self-awareness is the best tool to attracting the type of friends that you want to have. If you're really not self-aware, you probably will not. We're the sum of what we put into ourselves and the people that we collect with. So self-awareness is so huge. How does my outfit come across and I come into a room? Do I look dirty and disheveled? Do I look like I haven't combed my hair? And, do I scowl? Not only that, am I a chaotic presence? Some people are just like, they get in, they're just, you got to clean the table, and they're just a chaotic presence. Are you an anxious presence? Because what's going to happen is people are just going to not want to feel that vibe. Everybody wants a life-giving, joyful presence around. Even the introverts that want to dip to the door when a person like me comes around will enjoy. We all need more joy in our lives. Everybody needs their joy quotient up a level. So think about how valuable. That's the thing. I think people need to walk into rooms and feel like, what kind of value can I add to this room? And value is not about extroversion. Value is about having extreme self-awareness about what I can uniquely contribute to somebody with no strings attached.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, as someone who has had to teach myself how to be more relatable, more less horrible. For me not to be so horrible. No, but is realizing that what the narrative that I'm writing in my head, I call it a telenovela.
A telenovela.
The telenovela is not real, right? This is not the story, and so I can change the story. So if I walk in a room and I tell them this, nobody wants to talk to me, they this, that, all these other kind of things. Well, now I'm writing my telenovela becomes my reality because I actually make it happen. Yeah. And so one of the things that I've had to do personally is become so much more intentional about those things. Even this. Yeah. I mean, I knew that, hey, I wanted to do a podcast, all that stuff, but I'm like, how am I actually going to talk to people? Like, do they even want to talk to me? Those kind of, I'm a 44-year-old man. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years old or 20 years old.
Feel it, right?
There are thoughts. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think I want to process through for a minute with you is the risk of, or the struggle of comparison, right? So I could go, we just came out of men's conference, right? I designed my my sermon for the first session.
Yes.
To be
Which was
very
great.
Oh, thank you. To be very reflective.
Yeah.
All right. It was very reflective.
Oh,
knowing that this third session that you would be teaching in, there would be a different level. They would be in a different posture, right? It was strategic in that place. But I could go down a slippery slope, which for a moment, it almost went. I almost went there.
Tell
I'm being honest.
Come on, let's double click on that.
Yeah, exactly. He was so much better than me.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
and then that could create.
You're a good friend.
And then could create, he's so much better than me. But okay, then I could go, he's so much better than me, and thank God he ended it, because they're ending on those kind of things. And then go, he's so much better than me, and then I could get in my head, and then we're having dinner in a little bit, and now I'm all in my feels, and I'm all in my, and meanwhile I'm missing an opportunity, not just to develop a friendship, but to receive what you could plant in my life, right? In this encounter, this moment that we get to have dinner together in a little bit. So talk a little bit, as we kind of wrap up, talk a little bit about, for those folks that struggle with comparison.
Well, we all do, to a certain degree, if we're honest.
Yeah.
So thank you for double clicking on that and being honest with your audience, because it's the same thing. I'm sitting here thinking, well, man, he's got a larger church than me, and they've got multi-sites, and I'm just the new kid on the late bloomer and all that. So we're all swapping that stuff, right? And we're all a little bit insecure. And so the only way we strengthen our friendships is to be honest. So I'm not looking at you across the table and be like, oh, what's up with that? I'm looking at you and saying, oh, there you are, John.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So now we can really start building, because unless we're getting rid of the proverbial fig leaves, it's just all a sham. And
That's really good.
Yeah, we're just such frauds. That's why we call it makeup, right? Because we're always trying to cover up something. And I ultimately believe that, we say these little cushy things, comparison is the killer of joy. Well, really, it's more the killer of contentment than joy. I think too much, I think we should bring joy to rooms and so on, but contentment is a learned process. And the biggest way to kill our contentment is with comparison. And we're just not honest enough. I crave authenticity. I just want, keep it 100, man. Let's go. I want to go there. For me, I struggle. I'm always trying to take the sunbathers down to the depths to 2,000, miles under the sea. And you do that with honesty really quickly. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah,
but
no, it was good. It was all good. And so, as we wrap this up,
wrapping it up, this is so good,
and then we go
man.
get some food. Is there anything, because I know you enjoy reading, you do a lot of research. You were, I think you said, the dean of a Bible college, so it's academics is kind of your thing, and leaning in. What are some resources? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
What are some good resources for those that are watching and listening? Of, hey, I know that I got a friend issue.
Mm-hmm.
I know I need to go deeper.
Yep.
Or maybe I have tons of friends, but they're not really friends, right?
Yes.
Again, they'll go deeper part. Or, hey, I want to understand more this whole theology around growing in my faith with friendship.
Yeah.
Because the church is really big at saying, big C church, it's you and God. It's you and God.
Yeah.
It's you and God. So do you have some resources you can give? And we can put this in the show notes and so forth and so on for people. But what are some resources? What are some things that they can, even from you, is there anything that you've done, some talks or anything like that you can direct people?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book How to Be a Friend, which was written by Marcus Aurelius. It's ancient friendship stuff that it's not too thick to read. It's just fascinating, and it's full of little ancient tweets or whatever of just how to be a really good friend. So I'd start there. I don't want to give too many resources because usually people don't get enough. So I'm going to just say that one resource.
Yeah.
And then I think I've done some stuff on our podcast, which is called Leadership in Black and White. There's an episode on there where I'm kind of unpacking friendship and some of the the pain that I've had with friends. I'm currently feeling some pain, to be quite honest with you, because friendships are changing, and I'm trying to work through letting some of that go and receiving new stuff. But I guess How to Be a Friend is the best thing. And I would read maybe A Resilient Life by Gordon MacDonald. And A Resilient Life by Gordon MacDonald tracks the type of friends that you need to have in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
That's really
good. And that
good.
the whole book is about what he calls a happy few, that in your life you need to have a happy few that builds resilience in your life. So one's a secular book, the other one is a spiritual book for people that are Christian.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Hey man, this was really good. Every time I say like, oh, it's only going to take a few minutes, and we only have 15 minutes, and then it's like 40 minutes of talking. And by the way, you also are ending our first season. This is our last episode of season 1 of Beyond the Pulpit. I just remembered it as we were talking.
Listen, everybody, I want you to put this on X. I need you to put it on Instagram. I need you to put it on Facebook. Tell everybody. This is a conversation that must be heard. Pastor John and Pastor Wayne talk about friendship. Let's get it.
There we go. We need to put that everywhere. That's a great. So thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Incredible conversation. You're doing incredible things. Super glad that God has intersected our lives together, and so appreciate everything you've done, and can't wait to just see all that you're going to do. And that next time we talk, the church will be like 200% greater in attendance in Jesus' name.
For the Northeast,
well, that's it. That's our final episode of season 1 of Beyond the Pulpit. Love you guys.